Hi everyone, I am joined right now by Langston Williams. He's a filmmaker, and as you can see right here, he's been fast at work on a new film. Tell me a little bit about Stay Woke.
All right, so Stay Woke is my thesis film from the University of New Orleans. And pretty much in a nutshell, it is a story about police brutality, but if I were to be more specific, whenever we see these stories happen in the media, no offense, a lot of times it paints the story as either being this side or that side. It's one side versus another. It's always black and white. And I feel like so many times there's usually a story that's missed whenever we watch this unfold, and that is the story of the gray zone. So my goal with Stay Woke was to tell the story that usually falls between the cracks and to show one of these incidents, but from more of a neutral standpoint. So Stay Woke follows three different characters, well, three sets of characters, two African-American youth who've been frustrated by a recent police killing, a police officer who is new to the town and who is just trying to do the right thing, and a politician who is running for re-election, but he's been having a hard time connecting with the people that he once represented. And these three characters, their lives intertwine throughout the film, and then they all collide at the end. And it leaves you wondering who's to blame, who's right or who's wrong, and who is the one that caused everything to happen. And the crazy thing is that you could say all shared blame, but at the same time, none of them are completely guilty.
And does that lead into what you were referring to as the gray area, where things aren't always one person right, one person wrong? Do you feel there's that gray area has more room for conversation as well?
I would say that, and that's the gray area is what you're left with at the end.
Yeah, and so we actually have a few clips from the footage here. We're going to try to take some up behind us so you can kind of walk us through what are we seeing in this scene here.
So this is a scene where our politician character is coming to pretty much a local grocery store. He's trying to pick up a few last-minute votes after getting some bad news during the election. In this scene, we realize, wow, this guy really is not connected with the people at all. And if he did ever once have the people, he's definitely not having them in his corner right now.
Yeah.
And another character, this lady right here, she's calling him out pretty much on, well, you're not who you once were, and this is the reason why you're not winning the election as of right now. This is the reason why you've lost us.
And do you feel that politicians need to go out in the community more and have those face-to-face interactions to really get a sense of what the people they serve need?
Very much so. And that was, a lot of people, whenever I first wrote it, were, when they asked, so why include a politician? Why not just the police and the African-American youth? Because I think the politicians and the leaders of our community also play a large part of this conversation. So we can't leave them out of this talk.
They're just as much a part of the narrative, it seems.
Exactly, very much so.
And we also have a few more clips here. What are we seeing in this one? I see we're seeing one of the officers here. So
this is the lead officer. You find out early on that he is married to an African-American woman. So it would be hard to say that anything he does is motivated by racism, but at the same time, as an officer in the line of duty, we see throughout this day that he goes through, there are a lot of situations he's put in where he has to make judgment calls, and sometimes they're really tough. And it's pretty much to say that while they might not always be in the right, and there usually are many reasons or times where they're wrong in some of the decisions that they make, it's not always driven by race. There are a lot of factors that play into it, and he pretty much has an interaction with the other leads at the end, and you kind of see the time where he has to make a quick judgment call, but it's a lot of pressures on him, and anything, the wrong call could cause a lot of things just to go haywire.
And why do you think it's important to include this side of the narrative into the story as well?
I think a lot of times when we see these stories unfold, Some stations and some media outlets try to place a lot of blame on the officers, sometimes more than what should be. I guess I watch some of these stories sometimes, and while on one hand I would like to be like, oh wow, this officer, he definitely did the wrong thing, but whenever you hear the other side, then you start to think, well, if I were put in this situation with a gun and were forced to make a split-second life or death situation that could either impact my life or someone else's life, what would I do to make the right decision? And sometimes you might make the wrong decision. So it was important for me to show the pressure that falls upon them and pretty much the consequences of their actions in one way or another.
So we're seeing some clips from the film, and before we dive into the entire process of making the film, what really inspired you to dive into and research into this topic?
Well, let me preface this by saying those who knew me while I was in grad school would know that over the course of 3 years, all I talked about was that I could not wait till I got to my final year of my studies because I was going to make this amazing horror film. It's going to be the greatest horror film ever. About a year before I actually shot it, I actually wrote this horror film that I was going to shoot. And I had the script completed. I was casting people. I was gearing up to shoot it until the summer right after writing it and the summer right before I was going to start shooting was when America witnessed the deaths of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Terrence Crutcher, and Keith Lamont Scott. And the media did this thing, no offense once again, where they began kind of showing each side, polarizing America. Everyone began playing the blame game, but no one really was talking about solutions or was really talking about what really happened because they were so busy pointing fingers. Right. So I decided that in the terrible circumstance or situation that this could potentially be my last film I ever make, would I rather have as my calling card for the rest of my filmmaking career be this horror film or be a film that kind of struck closer to home, that was relevant and timely, and one that I might not ever get another chance to tell. So I decided to put away my horror film. I rewrote a new script, and it was Stay Woke, and I decided to make this film instead.
And how long did that filming process take from start to finish?
Believe it or not, I wrote it pretty quickly. I would say it almost was given to me divinely. And the first time I sat down at my computer to start writing it, the whole story almost flowed out right then and there, with maybe a couple of changes happening beyond that. But I would say I wrote it in maybe a day or so, with rewrites happening over the course of a week. I shot it a few months later, over the course of 2 weeks, and from there I edited the film from probably the late November of 2016 to December of 2017 when I finished editing.
Wow. And obviously this is something that you were very passionate about, and others who are watching this might be really interested in seeing Stay Woke. Where can they find this if they're interested in watching?
Well, so happy you asked. It's actually screening tomorrow at the UNO Film Festival, May 13th at 5 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center on campus. It has so far gotten into 32 film festivals.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's picked up 7 wins so far. It's screened in a number of different cities, from Pikeville, Kentucky to Los Angeles, California, Hagerstown, Maryland, pretty much all over. From now to the end of its festival run, as of right now, I have a screening coming up in Smyrna, Tennessee. I have another one in Houston, third time actually in Houston, Michigan, Hoboken, New Jersey, So, I mean, it'll be going around making rounds in different cities.
Absolutely.
Next Thursday, it will be screening at the biggest film festival in the world, the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes, on May 17th at 3:30 p.m. So,
What's it like to know it was accepted into that many film festivals and has been going over so well?
mind-blowing. Before this, my previous films, I had submitted into a number of festivals. For instance, my last film, I submitted it to 70 festivals, only got into 6, and did not win anything. So to know that this current film is doing so well, it's pretty mind-blowing. It's almost surreal. I just hope to keep the momentum going.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. And just a quick reminder, this will be airing tomorrow in New Orleans, so be sure to go and check it out. Langston, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Black Lives Matter protests have still been in full phase.
Highly recommended that if you live in the city or surrounding areas that you stay in at night.
In the city tonight, huh?
Today is election day, so make sure you get down to those polls and cast that vote.
You gotta know who the threat is, and it's not those 2 guys.
What happened to you?
Just pray for our city, my brothers and sisters. And please remember, stay woke.
I stay woke.